A very good evening to all of you. We welcome all of you, all our viewers, to the Kalinga Literary Fest on Bhava Samvad. We're very happy to have with us a very esteemed personality, Mr. Ramesh Venkateshwaran. We're so happy to have you, sir, with you. And we would like to introduce you to all our viewers today. Mr. Ramesh Venkateshwaran, a very inspiring personality who has continuously sought meaning to life. And despite his impressive educational qualifications, experience, he has been a learner throughout. Stepping out of his comfort zones, Mr. Ramesh Venkateshwaran, a teacher at heart. He has inspired everyone he has met on the way. And that's what a teacher is, a continuous learner. Mr. Ramesh Venkateshwaran has donned many hats over the years. After a successful stint in the corporate world and as a corporate consultant, trainer, he has devoted his time to teaching. He is an alumni of IIT Bombay and IIM Bangalore. He is an adjunct faculty member at his alma mater, IIM Bangalore, for close to 3 decades. And something that stands very unique in his career is that he headed the Lawrence School, Lovedale, Nilgiris. And that's something which generated so much curiosity. He was also a part of the SDM Institute for Management and Development, Mysuru. Mr. Ramesh is a co-founder, chairman, and volunteer at Vishwa Society for Mental Health, Bengaluru, a not-for-profit organization that offers free counseling to people in emotional stress. Thank you so much, sir, for being here today with us, and we are so looking forward to the session. Now I invite Professor Dwarika, who is the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of the School of Economics at RV University, to give his comments. Please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pushkarni, and a very good afternoon to everybody. On behalf of RV University and Kalinga Lit Festival, it's my proud privilege and honor to host Mr. Ramesh Venkateshwaran. Rather, I would call him Professor Ramesh Venkateshwaran, who's been in a kind of an academic colleague for so many years at IIM Bangalore and other places. And it's our privilege that we are hosting him for an amazing book talk and a workshop on Happy Trails, what is. And, I've gone through his book and some of the very interesting insights have been generated. I'm also surprised by the fact that somebody at his age and stage can connect so beautifully, not just with Gen Z, which we nowadays teach, but also to Gen Alpha, which is just in the in the age group of 10, 11, 12, and others. So while we teach in the colleges nowadays with Gen Zs, you are also in touch a lot more because you've been part of your own alma mater, the Lawrence School, and you've been working with the younger generation. And I think a lot is needed today. What is come up from your own discussion about success versus happiness, and how exactly nowadays the young kids, especially in the pandemic times, who are all not been able to go to the schools, they are resorted only to the screen. Even today, we are doing this webinar through the virtual mode. If times would have been better, we would have loved to invite you to our campus at RV University, which is the newest university in Bangalore in the liberal arts space. You would be happy to know, Mr. Venkateshwaran, that we've started last year. RV, as you know, has got tremendous, experience in the last 80 years. And now we have got a School of Liberal Arts, a School of Design, School of Economics, and we would be starting a School of Computer Science as well. So, all of this will come very handy in terms of your own career journey, from an engineer to a management student to somebody who's worked in the diverse fields and now into the scope of education. So without taking much of a time, I welcome you on the behalf of the board and management of RV University, and we thank Kalinga Literary Festival to give us this platform to partner and host you for this amazing talk. So looking forward to your pearls of wisdom, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dwarika, Dr. Pushkarni. Thank you so much for and the Kalinga Lit Fest for inviting me to this program. This program actually, this session means a lot to me. You will see in my talk and in the book, I talk about emotional involve, and for me personally, this session has a huge and strong emotional connect for two reasons. One is RV University. I have a connect with RV because my daughter is an alumnus of RV College of Engineering. And, she was not a gold medalist, she was a medal rank holder in mechanical engineering. And I remember those days when she was joining mechanical engineering. Everybody dissuaded her, the counselors dissuaded her from joining and getting into mechanical engineering. And by the time she was in her second year, they had some 5 or 6 or 7 girls, which was a record in mechanical. So RV College has a place in my heart. And Kalinga Lit Fest, I only wish the COVID was not there, because I would have loved to visit Bhubaneswar for more than one reason. The main reason being that when I was about 11, 12, 13 years old, for 4 years, I actually lived in a beautiful seaside town called Balasore. Balasore is north of Bhubaneswar, if I remember right. And I had 3 or 4 years of my lovely school day times in Balasore. So today's evening is really a great nostalgia trip to RV and Kalinga, and that's great. Thank you for inviting me. And the audience is actually perfect, because while Professor Dwarika said that this is across generations, this book, and I think it is. I got this book over here, The Happiness Trail. This is the ideal audience, and at the university level, because I think this is the time one has to start thinking. So what I'd like to do today is, roughly in the next 45 to 50 minutes, give or take a few minutes, what I'd like to do is broadly structure my talk in 5 parts. It's all centered around the book as a theme, but I thought it'll be nice for people to know how one evolved. I have worn different hats, and when I look back, it's paradoxical that I teach strategy in IIMs for so many years. I consult in strategy, and strategy is all about objective, about clarity, about focus. And if I look at my life, it's been all over the place, from a corporate world to a private consultant, to a teacher, to a school, to a voluntary organization. And therefore, in the last few years, and I said, okay, maybe these are different occupations, and maybe this book distills in some way what was common to me, what was my core, what was my characteristic that made these things happen, where I believe I've been moderately happy and reasonably successful. So what I'd like to do is, for the audience, and because we are on a virtual mode, it may be difficult to have frequent interactions as we might have had in a live workshop. But feel free to jot down your chats or your questions or your points, pass it on to the coordinator, and one will be happy to discuss this when we can at the end of the session. Broadly, I would like to walk the audience through, all of us through 4 or 5 points. The first is, why is this book relevant? There are, if you do an Amazon search, or if you do a search on the website, you'll say 70, 80, 100,000 happiness books somewhere or the other. Why is this one more book? Is it relevant? Is it not relevant? So I'd like to spend a few minutes on how this book actually happened, and why is it relevant to any audience actually, but definitely to the RV University audience, who I presume are all undergrads and graduate students who are just starting on their journey, significant journey in life. From there, I would like to lead, as it's a structure in the book itself, what is happening in the world around us. And this is the point I want all of us to think seriously. There is no rocket science in what I say. It's a distilling of my own experiences and thinking, and what is happening around us, and what is its impact on all of us. We are feeling the impact in multiple ways, but I try to put that together in some form so that we make some sense out of it. And the third part, which is the main part of the book, is How do we deal with what is happening around us? How do we ensure that we achieve the desired goals? How do we ensure that at the end of the day, at the end of the journey, we find ourselves in the place where we wanted to be? And the reality is, many of us start our journey somewhere in life and end our journey somewhere else. And 15, 20, 30, 40 years later, we land up somewhere and say, what am I doing over here? I don't think I wanted to be here. And this is the reality many of us go through. The current generation, I think it's even more important for reasons I will explain to you. So, broadly, why this? So, as I always like to talk about in my management classes of strategy, I think the simplest way to deal with strategy is answer the questions why, what, and how. Why this book? What is this relevance of this book? How do we deal with the issues that are in this in our context? And lastly, I will close with what are the dilemmas and challenges youngsters are likely to face. All of us face it. It's not that we don't face it, but I specifically saying young people because you have the next 40, 50, 60 years of your life ahead of you. People like us, we have finished a major part of our life and we can only distill our wisdom and give gyan to people. Many times this gyan, we may or not ourselves have not practiced it, but it's always easier to give gyan than practice gyan. But I will try and look at what are the challenges we face. How did this book really happen? And this book happened last year, but I was basically a corporate man. I enjoyed the corporate world, but for some reason, at an age when I was in the prime of my corporate life, at age 38, in fact, and this was in the 90s when salaries were not very high, savings were very low, I just decided to give it up. I said, maybe I need to do something different. And for reasons I don't want to get into, because it's all about what am I trying to do? What am I trying to chase? I remember telling my boss one day, I don't think God sent me to this world to sell motorcycles. There must be some bigger purpose. Motorcycle is something to keep my body and soul together, the roti kapda makan kind of stuff. So whatever happened in the 90s, I left the corporate world. I quite frankly did not know what I'm going to do, but I'm a big Steve Jobs fan and Apple fan, and one of the things he quotes every time is in life it's not only important to know what to do, it's equally important to know what not to do. And I guess at that time I knew what I didn't want to do, and that was to continue the corporate world. 30 years down the road, it's exactly 30 years this year, 31 years. It's all nice to say that things have been good. History is written after the event. So it's all good to say this. It could as well have gone the other way. But yes, things have been good. And I thought I will put together, and how did this book come about? Because in 2005, I gave up all this commercial work that I was doing. And for some reason, which is another long story and a book in itself, I landed up in my alma mater, my school where I had studied as a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old boy. And that is the Lawrence School in Ooty. It's a 160, 170-year-old heritage residential school. And for whatever reason, I went there. I had a short stint over there, and then I left that for a variety of reasons. And then I found myself, interestingly, in a fascinating place in Mysore called the Dharmasalas Institute of Management. For those of you, RV University, all of you are in Bangalore, so I presume you've heard of Dharmasala. And Dharmasala runs, the trust runs a fascinating, beautiful school in Mysore, and I became the director of that school. I have been teaching at the IIM. So what I found was between 2000 and 2000 or so, I had an opportunity to interact with young people. And because of the Lawrence School and in Mysore, it was not just interacting with young people, but it was interacting in residential environments, which means I had a 24/7 connect with them. And I got into this fascinating world of youngsters. And I think that was what led me to doing a lot of things which have been greatly enriching as I see it. So when I was in Lawrence School, and especially when I was in Mysore, one of the things I started looking at life and the way life had changed from the time I was a school boy and a college student and to what was happening now. The whole context had changed. The world was different. The expectations were different. The worldly pressures were different. And I found that, are we really enjoying the journey, what we're going through? And I found that probably we are not. We are not enjoying it as students. Our parents are not enjoying it. Everybody is under pressure. And that started setting me to think about what are we really doing. Now, I want to give you a disclaimer. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a social thinker. I'm not a behavioral scientist. Um, but I think all of us at some level think about some of these existential issues. So I started looking at it, especially because I was with children. And what I found in the management school, because I was associated with IIM Bangalore, alma mater, and teaching over there regularly, uh, one of the things I found was that every 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, there will be some big disruption in the world, a disruption which will be about big scams, about scandals, about financial things, and then everybody goes back and says, "What are we doing with our students? Why aren't we teaching them values? Why aren't we doing something meaningful?" And I said this would go on for about 6 months to 1 year, and then we would drop it. So if people, many of you would be young, you may not know it, but in the 2000s, there was the famous Enron scam, which was one of the biggest financial scams of that time. And in 2008, when I was the director of the Mysore Institute, that was the famous subprime scams, when companies shut down and a whole lot of things happened. So it was really at that time, since I was the director of the B School, I sat down with my colleagues, and Dharmasala is an institution which is rooted very strongly in ethics, values, people involvement, social upliftment, and so on. And I said, what are we teaching in these schools, and why are we not doing something more meaningful about, we're supposed to make better human beings, better people. Management is only a means to an end. And I, with my colleagues, we said, whatever subject we are teaching in management, whatever be the area, can we devote one session to matters relating to values, principles, dilemmas, conflicts, and so on and so forth, as connected to your subject. So I was a marketing person, or I am a marketing person. What have these got to do with marketing? Somebody could do it in behavioral science, somebody could do it in economics, somebody could do it in operations, and so on and so on. Well, my colleagues and I agreed on that, and I don't know if it continues, but I know for a fact that today, 20 years later, my last lecture on my strategy class is what I talk about, which has become a book. So, in a way, it started in 2006, 7 or so, and today I call it my last lecture or the final lecture. And interestingly, my course at the IIM and is called PSM, Product Strategy and Management. And my 20th session, I tell them that this is about life, this is about where we are headed. But I tell them that I will still call it PSM so that the administration does not have an issue with it, except that it's called Personal Strategy and Management. And this particular session had been received extremely well by students. People come to me 10 years, 15 years later and say, I remember you mentioned this, I remember you mentioned that. And that was very gratifying. And many of the students would say, I think you need to convert this into a book. You need to do something into a book. I really didn't think about that, because converting a 1.5 hour lecture into a book is not that simple. And I think, as I kept telling people, ask me to talk to 1,000 people, I can talk for any amount of time. But writing is something which calls for phenomenal discipline. It calls for a certain level of mindset, discipline. And I really didn't know whether I had that. Every time I decided I would sit and write, I would find an excuse to get up and move out of my table and move on. But and the second trigger, the pandemic was one trigger, of course. The pandemic was we couldn't move out anyway. And the second trigger was, and which is the final form of this book, actually came from a classmate of mine at IIM Bangalore. And about 5 or 7 years ago back, she sent us a mail to our e-group and said, something, we're all getting old, we got children, we got grandchildren. What is the message you will leave for your grandchildren, for 5 things that you would do to lead a happy and meaningful life? So in many ways, that became a trigger for me, because I look back over the last 10 years and I said, what have I been talking to children at schools, at colleges, at IIMs, at SDM, Mysore? People would call me as a chief guest for a function, and I would have this same raga that I would keep singing over and over and over again. And I thought maybe I should put this down together. And that is how finally this book happened. Now, Why this book? How did this come? I'm going to talk about this in the next few minutes. Now, why is this book relevant, and why is it called a trail? Now, the trail is because a trail is not a pakka path. So this is not a do-it-yourself book. I am not saying you must do this, you must not do that. Please do this. There are many people who will say how to be happy and make money, how to be happy and sleep well, how to be happy and lose weight, all sorts of stuff. I am not saying anything. This is a book which says, think about what you want to do in life. And it's a trail. A trail means there is no fixed path. It's not a road which is earmarked and tarred and concreted. It is a trail. You explore it. You explore, you meander, you wind your way out, broadly knowing that you have a direction that you're headed in. So that is what I see as the trail. Now, let me go to this part as to why is this relevant. Why is this relevant is because today's world is very, very different. The world of 2022 is very different from the world I grew up in 1960 or 70. If you look at all of you as students, if you look at your parents, maybe who will be much younger to me, and if you look at many of your grandparents, the worlds we lived in were very, very different. Today, you see that every minute of the day, we are constantly trying to achieve something. From the day a child is born, you want a child to get into a good nursery. The nursery has to move into a school. The school has to move into a college. And in that school, it's about grades. It's about CBSE, ICSE, +2. I need 99. Then I have to write an exam and I have to get a good marks in the exam. And, this, and then I ask myself, why are we doing this? Why are we doing all of this? Because these are measures of success. If I get a good school, I'm successful. If I get 99 in my board exams, I'm successful. If I get the JEE or medical or XYZ or this college or this course, I'm successful. So why do I want to be successful? I want to be successful because it'll help me in my next job, in my next step. If I get 99 in my board, I will get a good college. If I get a good college, I need good marks. If I get good marks, I'll get a good placement. If I get a good placement, I will be happy. I will get this, I'll get my car, I'll get my BMW, whatever it may be. So what I realized is, in a way, we are chasing success. And success becomes our prime thing, that I need to have a measure of success to help me in my next step. Which is fine. There's nothing wrong in that because we really want to do it. But I asked myself, why do I want success? Why do I need to get into a good school? Why do I want this money? Why do I want this? Because I think at the back of our minds, there is an underlying implication that if I get all of this, I will be happy. A good school will allow me to think I will be happy. This will allow me to do this, I will be happy. This will allow me to do this, I will be happy. So essentially, what I find is what we are chasing is success, but what we really want is happiness. And what we are assuming is success equal to happiness. And what I found was that formula doesn't necessarily hold. That formula doesn't hold. If every successful person were to be happy, then the world would be a very different place to live in. The book talks about it at multiple levels. I'll briefly touch upon it right now. If every successful person is measured by whatever success, money, leader in you could be a great artist, you could be a great musician, you could be a great sportsman, you could be a great sport actor, actress, it could be anything. I'm not saying success is only defined by bank balance. But what I am saying is, if success were the factor that contributes to happiness, then there are many things in this world that would not happen. The first thing is, in my view, depression and antidepressants wouldn't be a multi-billion-dollar business, because I don't think the poor people can afford antidepressants. It's the rich people who take antidepressants, and the Prozacs, and there are brands. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. So I changed my whole formula, and what I said was, and what I started working on was, what we are looking for is happiness, and we are assuming success equal to happiness. I turned this thing around and I said, maybe if I'm happy, then I'm successful. So let me redefine my life and say my objective is to pursue happiness. And if I pursue happiness, I am successful. And therefore, this is really the world we are living in today. We are living in a world today where poverty levels have improved, GDPs have improved, physical comforts have improved, technology improvements have improved. And yet, studies show happiness has gone down, stress has gone up, anxieties have gone up. All effects of stress and negative effects of mental health are showing in people the world over, despite the fact that all the physical parameters of so-called progress seem to have gone up. So what I saw as a paradox, and what I'm saying is, we have got more of many things, but we've actually got much less of what we wanted, and that was happiness. So that, in the book we'll talk about all of this. And the other realization, and I think all of us know, is while we measure, and we have to, I'm not saying we shouldn't have targets. I mean, we must have targets. We have to have targets, otherwise we'll be vegetables. The question is, how productive and how useful is it to help us lead a meaningful life, a happy life? And what I found is, we are on what is called this hedonic treadmill, a treadmill. See, what happens is, if you keep only these success parameters as your goals, you realize the day you have achieved that success goal, that goal is no longer relevant. If I have got into a good school, the goal of getting into a good school is gone. I now got my next pressure saying I must do well in the board exam. The day I've done well in the board exam, that board exam result is useless. I've now got my next pressure point. So if you really look at it, this so-called happiness is always eluding us. Because the day you have achieved your goal, that goal is no longer useful. It's irrelevant. The next goal is what we are worrying about. The day I've got my Maruti car, I realize, why should I have a Maruti? My friend has a Creta. The day I buy my Creta, he says, no, this is not good enough. I need a BMW. The day a BMW is bought, somebody has bought something else. The day I have a 2-bedroom house, that is useless. Somebody has got a 3-bedroom house, and so on. So I think it's very important for us to remember that the goalpost keeps changing. And if we are not conscious about this, if we do not think about this seriously, and why is it important for this current generation, I'm going to talk about that, of course, in much more detail. But essentially, to sum up what I've been saying so far, we are living in a very complicated world. We are living in a very competitive world, which I'm going to talk about right now. And at the core, what we are all trying to be is, at the end of the day, we want to be happy. And we believe these are the methods by which we will become happy. No doubt it will contribute, but effectively what it actually gives us is not happiness, but what we might call short-term joy or pleasure. It gives me a sense of, we call it happiness maybe in a loose terminology, but effectively what it gives us is pleasure. And I don't want to get into a discussion on what is pleasure and what is happiness. We can touch upon that, but the next part of my talk is all going to be about what is it that we need to do and what is it that we can do. Right now, all I'm saying is, we are living in a very, very fast-moving, complex world. Things are improving, but the core of what we want to be happy actually doesn't seem to be improving. And I keep saying this, the minute you talk about happiness and meaning and values, immediately there is this thing of spirituality, there is a philosophy, there is social scientists, there are the Puranas, the Bible, the Gita, the Quran. Minute you talk about this, you believe that's important. Now, I'm not saying they're not, they're very, very important, and they obviously add a perspective. But my book and my view is not about that. I call that the wisdom of the ages. That is wisdom that has permeated down over the ages. My book is what I call the wisdom of age, of just growing old and gray. Through this, one has thought through some processes, and we go to. So let me come to the second part of thing. What is happening in the world around us? What is happening in the world around us that makes something like this important? Now, again, I must make it very clear. This book is not to say you must do meditation or you must be spiritual or you must be. I am saying you think through what you think you want to do. What you think you want to do, which will make you happy. That's it. And I'm only giving you a sort of a guideline, which I think is fairly universal. irrespective of how you define success. It's about more internal to me as a person and my well-being, rather than external metrics of what success or failure is. So let's look at what is happening. So for young people, all of you from the university, I hope this book will be readable for at least one reason. There are lots of examples from the sports field. I love sports. I've been a sportsman, and I believe the sports field is an excellent place to learn about life, because it does everything that life is all about. It's extremely competitive. It's extremely rewarding. It's extremely frustrating. It's extremely ruthless. It's extremely fun. It's got every element of the drama of life in that. Now, let's look at the three things, at least on sports, that you can look at in life. The first thing is, if you look at, I was just watching the Australian Open today, and the second seed and the 120th seed, you can't make out the difference between them. You look at a 100 meters hurdle, the difference, 100 meters race or swimming, the difference between number one and number two is 0.01 seconds. So we are living in a world where competition is extremely close. And this is the same for everyone. If I am talking to you, there are 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 people better than me in this world who can talk to you. When you go for a job, you are good, but there are hundreds of other people who are equally good. So what we are seeing is we have to survive and succeed in this competitive world, number one. The second thing I found is very fascinating is we are not necessarily living in a fair world. Again, I use the sports example. Those of you who follow tennis or games like this, you will understand this. The winner of a Wimbledon gets $3.5 million. The runner-up gets $1.5 million. And if you look at the point difference, there'll be a difference of 1 point. 1 point. I've seen this. I've tracked this over 10, 15 years. Nadal would have lost to Federer. Federer would have lost to Djokovic by a difference of 1 point on 200 points played, which means the difference is less than 0.5%. But the rewards are double. So rewards are not necessarily linked to performance alone. Its rewards are linked to a whole lot of other things. And this is what we will see, which will happen to us. And the third thing, and this is the most important thing for youngsters, I want you to keep in mind, the stakes to win are very high. If you look at professional games today, yesterday's newspaper talked about, I think, Djokovic or Nadal. Typically, a person gets about 10%. A sports person gets about 10% of their winnings through the game, through the revenue through their winnings. 90% comes on endorsements. But when do endorsements come? Endorsements come only when you're winning, and therefore the pressure to win becomes very high. And in the process, trying to win, what do? We end up doing a whole lot of things. We take shortcuts. We resort to a whole lot of things. And this is the same thing in the business world. I want to get an order. I need to get this. I need to get business. I have to meet a target. In the process of trying to meet my success parameters, we end up doing a whole lot of other things. And this is what adds to the dilemma that we face of what do I do, what do I not do, and therefore showing, just keeping that as your success parameters to lead to happiness actually ends up not giving you happiness, even though you might be successful by what you might have decided. So what I call is today, what's happening is it's extremely difficult to stand out in a crowd, because there's millions of people who are as good as us. It's like walking into a supermarket and trying to pick up a toothpaste or a shampoo. There are hundreds of brands lying over there. Each one says, pick me up, and they're all from good companies. And there's nothing to say one brand is significantly better or worse. It's not only in a supermarket, in a 10 lakh car or in a 40,000 phone, the situation is there. So the question is, in this world, what is happening to the young generation is we are anxious to win. We want to win. And in the anxiety to win, we resort, or we may end up doing things which are not in our long-term interest. This is what I call, in this anxiety and hurry to win, nobody wants to use the staircase. We all want to use the elevator. We all want to get to the top using the elevator. None of us want to go through the journey. And if you read the book, there are lots of examples. We see, one has used them, all role models, some of the greatest names we might have seen in sports, in corporate world, in music, in art. And if we are not careful, what happens is you end up at a place where you had not planned to be. And that is what this book is all about. This book is saying, be careful. Think about where you're going at different stages. Now, why is it relevant for today's generation? And after that, I'll go on to my the whatever I would call is my recipe, if you want to call it so, the GPS. Why is it relevant for your generation, the students who are now doing the undergrad courses, and for the next few years of your life? Now, if you look at your life, that's the current students, all of you, look at your parents' life, look at your grandparents' life. There is a huge difference in the world that we are living in. And the significant difference, if you ask me, is the rate and pace at which change is happening. Now, remember one thing, change is always uncomfortable. Change is always disconcerting. Change is always unsure. And every time one has to change, it is stressful for people to have to adapt to the change because of the uncertainty of what the outcome is going to be. Now, people like us who were born in the 40s and the 50s, our change used to happen over maybe 15, 20, 30 years. We had a generation was roughly 15, 20, maybe 30 years. And therefore, change happened at a very slow pace. By the 90s, change started happening a little faster. But if you look at 2022, a generation is about 3 to 5 years. Many of you who are in college today, I don't know how much was Instagram when you were in school in the 5th and 6th and 7th standard. Your parents, let's talk about your parents. Not one of your parents would have had a smartphone when they were in school or college, because the smartphone came out in 2007, 14 years ago. 14 years ago, I'm sure all your parents were out of school and college. There was no Facebook. Probably your grandparents would never have grown up. Why? Probably, definitely, would not have grown up with an internet. And yet today, all of us, your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, and smallest children are working with all of this. What I'm trying to say is we are living in a world where change is very rapid. Now, what happens in that? So I like to give the analogy of life for us was like going down a very gentle stream, a very gentle flowing stream, shallow river or a stream. Now, when you're flowing down a gentle stream, nothing substantially dangerous can happen to you. You will move around, there will be a rock, there will be somewhere you may go to a bank, you will push back, the water, you can get down into the water, it will come to your ankle or your knees, but your journey goes on. You can't go way off where you wanted to go. And that was our journey. Nothing happened very rapidly. Today's world, I say, is you are all in the world of whitewater rafting and rapids. The tide is fast, the pace of movement is fast, and if you're not careful, if you do not have the skills, if you do not have a strategy to know how to manage it, you might find yourself capsizing. You might find yourself hitting against a bank and wondering, what are you doing there? You might be going against a waterfall. And what I believe is today, this is what you really need to do, because our life, your parents' life, your grandparents' world is very different from what you're living in. And therefore, you need to periodically take stock of what you're doing. And that is why this book has really come about. The book has come about thinking about what's happening to the generations today, what is likely to happen. And through that, I said, let's give this, what my friend said, what are the 5 things you will give your children or grandchildren to think about to lead a happy and meaningful life? So my first 2 parts was really about why is it relevant and what is happening in the world around us. And let me spend a few minutes to discuss how do we manage it? How do we do it? So I call it the 5 I's of a route to success. Now, 5, why 5? Because my friend said 5. 5 because it's easy to count, and it's very easy for me to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, I've been a management teacher, and those of you who look at management books, if you do, or when you go into management schools, you will find that it's always nice to have 4 P's of marketing, 5C of something, 7H of something, 6S of something else. So I thought I must also show that I'm a reasonably qualified academic, and I thought, let me come out with the 5 I's. So what I have given is a 5 I's, and I call this as a GPS to happiness. It's my GPS. Now, why do I say GPS? Because this is some language that your generation will understand. And this will tie up with what I just talked about a little while ago. See, what does a GPS do? And what is the difference between a GPS and a compass? A compass also tells you direction, but a compass tells you that this is the north. And from there, you figure out which way you want to go. What does a GPS do, however? A GPS not only tells you a direction, definitely, it also tells you different paths to reach that destination. But there is one very other important ingredient or data point that a GPS needs. A GPS needs your location. You must know where you are. A compass doesn't care where you are. It tells you this is the north. A GPS, however, says, if you want to go to some point A, I must know where you are now. And then what does the GPS do? The GPS gives you alternate paths. The 5 I's are the GPS. The GPS to say, navigate yourself the way you want to go. These are the ways in which you can do. Like a GPS says, listen, this is the way you go. The GPS also says you can go through that way. This is a toll road. And suddenly when you're on a road, the GPS says this road is blocked, but you can take a diversion. So effectively, what I link this book, the 5 I's, to my GPS for happiness and success. And for that, as I said, I need to know 2 things. I need to know what am I looking for. And as youngsters, and I'm not saying it should be money, it should not be money, it should be emotional. You decide what is your parameter of what you're looking for, and then figure out how do I get to that place. Now, why do I call it a GPS, and why do I also link it up is another important thing. You see, most of us have a destination. Today, I have a destination. And for all of you who are young, I find in India, one of the biggest challenges is you never know whose aspirations we are fulfilling. Most of us, I know I did it, like many of my children, and I mean, my children and others, most of us are fulfilling our parents' desires. Our parents say, move here, do this, do that, and we end up doing all of this. And sometime in life, we end up saying, what am I doing over here? That's the first thing. The second thing, what happens is that we also change as people over a period of time. So I feed my GPS and I say, I want to go there. Now I feed that GPS when I'm 20 years old. But at 40, I'm a different person. I am not the same person. Ramesh Venkateshwaran at 18, Ramesh Venkateshwaran at 30, when he's married without children. Ramesh Venkateshwaran at 45 when he's got married and 2 teenage children, and Ramesh Venkateshwaran at 60 are not the same people. They're completely different people. And that is why we need to keep taking stock and recalibrating our GPS. What was relevant to me at 18 or 20 may not be relevant at 30, 35. Now, if I don't consciously think about it, I am still pursuing that goal. I am still going on a route. And then I realized that actually I didn't want to be there. And many of us reach an age of 40, 50, 60. And then we say, is this what I was trying to do? Is this what I was aiming for? And then you realize, no, maybe this was not really what I should have thought about it 15 years ago, 10 years ago. So this is what I like to emphasize over here before I quickly wrap up on the 5 I's. Now, the 5 I's are just ingredients. They are ingredients. They are what I think are fairly neutral. They're fairly neutral, irrespective of what your success is. I may want to be the best musician. I want to be the best tennis player. I want to be the best mother or father. I want to be whoever it is. You can decide that. I feel these 5 I's will be good. Now, how you use the I really depends on the individual. Again, I leave it to you. I'm just saying these cannot work against you. They can only work for you. So, when I left the IIM at Bangalore and I went and joined a company, I had a boss who was a very, very, very direct boss, ruthless at one level, extremely lovable at another level. Wonderful person. So one day, we had to write a report, and I told him, I need some time, give me some time. And he says, why do you need time? I said, there are so many things to do and all. He says, Ramesh, listen, managers are like chartwalas. I said, what do you mean by chart? I'd come out of IIM, a gold medal. And I said, what the hell? I mean, he's calling me a chartwala. So he says, being a good manager or a person is like being a chartwala. So I said, explain. He says, when you go to a chart shop, how many things do you see as items on the menu? I say, you see about 100, 200 items, so many different items. I said, yes. And he says, how many ingredients do you think the chartwala keeps in his kitchen? I say, maybe 8, 10, 15, 12, whatever. He says, exactly. He says, the chartwala's skill lies in knowing what each ingredient can do and how much of each ingredient to put for different people. And therefore, your challenge lies in knowing what are the various ingredients you have, which you have very little. When you're talking, he was talking to me in terms of corporate strategy. He says, corporate strategy is about 5, 6, 7, 8 things. But how do you use them? How well do you use them? Therefore, the knowledge, your skill comes in knowing what each ingredient can do, and therefore how much of it you need for which customer. So the 5 I's is exactly the same. My 5 I's are universal in my view. It doesn't change for anybody. Now, where you want to be on each one of them is a very personal choice, and you can choose it in the manner that you want to. So this is my GPS. Background is, we're living in a competitive world. If you decide to go down a stream, you better know how to navigate. You better know how to manage the rapids. You better know whitewater rafting, and you have the skills, because the stream can take you anywhere, or even worse, you can capsize and find that, hey, you didn't reach where you wanted to go. And be clear about where I wanted to go. So let's look at the 5 I's. So my first I, I'm not going to discuss it in too much of detail because each one involves a discussion. But my first I is what I call integrity. And integrity is essentially, for me, I'm a marketing person. It's about defining what is brand me all about. Who am I? What do I stand for? I know all of you, even if you're not management students, you will know about a brand. When I say Maruti Suzuki, there is an image of a brand. When I say Mercedes, there is an image of a brand. When I say a Darshini, there is an image of a brand. When I say a Taj, there is an image of a brand. So every brand stands for something. When I say Oppo, Samsung, Vivo, Apple, each one connotes something about what's that personality of that product. In the same way, each one of us must be clear about who am I? What am I? What do I stand for? This goes back to your values, your beliefs, your thing. But what I would like to highlight is, basically, this is the single most important point to help you deal with the journey in life. Life is continuously about problem solving and conflict resolution. Every minute of the day, we have to make choices. Most of our choices are simple. Today, before I started this program, I had to decide, should I wear a kurta pajama or should I wear a shirt? Should I wear a round neck shirt or a blue collared shirt? Should I wear this jacket? Should I not wear this jacket? Simple stuff. But life isn't always simple. There are times when you have to make slightly more complicated decisions. And when you have to make complicated decisions, which has longer term impact for you and for others, you need to know who you are. And it's at that time you understand what are negotiable, what are non-negotiable. Okay, that's what we want to do. The second one is people. Money cannot buy you happiness. Money can buy you comfort. Money can buy you pleasure. Money can buy you all of that. It can never buy you happiness. Otherwise, the rich people would not be committing suicide. The rich people would not be depressed. It's very important for your generation because you are getting more and more isolated in a very connected world. The world is connected, but you're getting isolated through the social media. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to touch upon it beyond saying that it's serious stuff. There are a lot of examples I can give you in the question and answer time. We can do that. The third I for me, so the second I is interact. The first I is integrity. The second I is interact. Interact is spend time with people, face to face, person to person, and so on. My third I is what I call involve. Put your heart into what you're doing. This, I believe, is a very important element, especially for us in India, because we have become a Chalta Hai nation. We have become a nation which is very comfortable with jugaad. And yet, 1,000 years ago, we were probably some of the most brilliant architecture and engineering would have been, and science and mathematics and astronomy would be in India. But today, I would think that we have become a completely casual, indifferent country. Do as little as we can so that we can get away with it. And I think this is a very dangerous quality because at the end of the day, I don't think it leads to happiness at all. It doesn't give you a sense of satisfaction, a sense of purpose, a sense of achievement, and so on. So you have to look at putting yourself 100%, giving yourself 100%. Again, I've got some lovely personal examples of what is the difference between passion and obsession in sports and so on. If it comes up in the question and answer, we'll talk about it. The fourth I is, again, something which is very, very important for your generation, is imbibe. Learn, learn, learn. You are in a generation where you're going to get outdated if you're not constantly learning. You will be obsolete. And therefore, there are two parts of learning that you have to do. One is to learn to keep yourself in the current job, in the current profession, whatever you may be doing. The second is you may have to change your line itself. So people are talking about two kinds of skilling. One is upskilling and one is reskilling. Many jobs are going to be redundant. Many occupations are going to be redundant. And therefore, we will have to have the ability to learn in our existing, to learn for personal development, and to learn to maybe do something different. And this learning can only happen if, in my view, you have three H's. You must be hungry for knowledge. You must be honest to say, I don't know. And you must have the humility to listen to people. So the three H's for me, and I say this specifically because as we grow older, these three H's will start coming down. When I'm in a job and I'm a manager, people expect me to know. So I am not humble. I am not honest. I'm not hungry to know, and so on and so forth. And the last one, if you are listening to this program, you are in this category of the privileged few, like me. We are in this 100 million, 200 million people in this country who are extremely fortunate. And therefore, the fifth I is, what impact have we made in life? What have we done to make a difference to the people around us? And I think that gives one of the greatest senses of satisfaction and a joy, happiness, whatever we want to call it. All of us have to go beyond the job to earn our roti kapda makan, especially people like us. We are all sitting on a virtual program, which means we are fortunate. You're all studying in a university, which means you're fortunate. We've all had school and college education. We are the lucky few. And I think I would submit that, especially in our country, again, we need us to ensure that we spend some part of our time making a difference to the people around us. So I'm not talking about making more profits for your company or making more profits for your business or being a better painter and all that you will do. That's part of what you want to do. But have I made a difference to others? So the 5 I's for me are integrity. Who am I? Interact. Money cannot buy you happiness. People can decide whether you're happy or not. Involve. Put your heart into what you do. Do not settle for chalta hai and jugaad, whatever it may be. Imbibe. Keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. Absorbing. Imbibe is absorbing. And impact is, am I making a difference? So these are the 5 I's, and let me wrap this up because I said we will open it to questions. So all this is easy to say in a session. All this is not purely theoretical. In life, we will be facing challenges. We will face dilemmas and conflicts. As I said, my dilemma at 4 o'clock was, what should I wear? This and that. It's easy. But in life, we will be forced to take decisions which conflict with our values, which conflict with our beliefs, which conflicts with our personalities, it's at that time that some of these things will help you, especially the business of integrity. Because when you know who you are, when you know what you stand for, you also know where I am willing to negotiate, where I'm not willing to negotiate. And when you are clear about what you will negotiate and what you will not negotiate, you are also clear that you will live with the consequences of that decision. If I am not willing to do something, I know I will not get a promotion in this company. Fine. Either I'll continue this job without a promotion, my colleague will get it, my classmate will get it, or I decide I will move on. If I decide that I'm not going to shortcut or fudge something, I will lose. And there are enough examples in sports. People have lost $500,000-$600,000 on prize money because they said, no, what we did was not right. The umpire did not see it. I will tell the umpire this was wrong. We can debate this from a philosophical angle. But the point I'm trying to make is, for your generation, it's very, very important that you look at all these things. So let me wrap this up very quickly and to sum up, saying that your generation is sitting on huge opportunities, phenomenal changes that are happening, which we would never have dreamt of even 10 years ago. But the truth is, you don't know what's going to be life like 10 years from today. And you have to be skillful navigators. And for navigation, you need the skills, you need the competence, you need the planning. And if you are in control of some of these things, I think your journey will be a very happy, satisfying, successful journey. So, as I said, the 5 I's and this happiness is something I've thought about. I've had some fascinating discussions with students, both in my college and schools, and I continue chatting with all of them. It's a pleasure chatting with you. I wish I could do this live in person. It would be a fascinating exercise, because the last part of my book actually asks you to do your personal exercise. So there is something over there in the workshop. But thank you very much once again to RV University and Kalinga Lit Fest. I hope I will still make it to Bhubaneswar someday to attend your festival and visit Balasore after 45 to 50 years. Thank you all. Professor Dwarika, thank you so much for your hospitality, and I'm open to questions if there are any.
Amazing, fantastic talk, Professor Venkateshwaran. There's a lot of takeaways for us. And, I teach a subject called retail. And in that, I teach something called a pentagon and a triangle model. Okay. I think with your 5 I's and a 3H, I've got a fantastic pentagon and a triangle model in my classes now onwards in the workshops I do with my students on the pursuit of happiness, or the happiness trail, the pentagon and the triangle model of 5 I's and 3 H's. I think that was something is a great takeaway for me. I think there are a lot of questions which have come from the audiences. Like, for example, the first question is, what makes one to be an ethical leader? What exactly should be our moral compass? I think that's a very good question, which has come from the audience.
Okay, there is a chapter on this, Ashutosh. I can't answer this question in a simple manner, because there is a brilliant person. I've actually used his model in my book. See, ethics by definition is not right or wrong. That is the problem. What is ethical leader? You see, so in this whole happiness dilemma, so I told you the whole challenge is on dilemmas. When you talk of dilemmas, there are 2 kinds of decisions we take. One is we take a decision between choosing a right and a wrong. The simplest example I'll give you is, I'm beating a traffic light when there's no policeman. I'm going in a one-way. I am choosing a wrong decision. That's an easy one, because I am willing to face the consequences of taking that decision. I know the consequences. Now, that is what this scientist or thinker says. He says that is moral temptation. Moral temptation. I am succumbing to temptation and moral. But ethical dilemma is when you have to choose between right and right. See, there is no wrong in ethical. It's by values. Now, the simplest example I can give you is, now, Professor Dwarika, you understand this, I understand this. I am sitting in a college, and I am sitting in as the director of a college. There is a student who has not paid his fees for 3 months. And I know that they're coming from a poor family. I know he's coming from a poor family. Now, the rules say that if you don't pay for 3 months, you cannot keep the student. But mercy says, humanness says, I should not send him out. But the rules say, then I'll have precedences. What? So you see, the ethical dilemma is choosing between right and right. Let me give you a second quick example of right and right. My very good friend who works in the company I know has done something wrong. He's fudged a report, let's say. Now, do I owe the loyalty to my company to truth, or do I owe it to loyalty to a friend? Loyalty is also important. Truth is also important. The famous book La Miserable, when somebody steals something for hunger, do you tell that person that you stole? Now, is it right or wrong? So to answer your question, Ashutosh, I don't know what is an ethical dealer, but I do know there are ethical dilemmas. And that is why I chose the first eye integrity. The first eye integrity tells me that when I am in these difficult situations, once I know who brand me is, I know which decision to take. See, the challenge is not about taking the decision. The challenge is living with that decision and sleeping well at night.
What do I stand for?
And that can only happen if I'm clear about me. I hope I answered.
I think you need a long, answer for that. Another discussion. Pranab says why people brand morality, value-based education, principle-based ideological, spiritual education as a utopian ideal concept. Why it can't be the norm rather than the exception?
Right. Pranab, again, I am not sure whether can I leave the question on? If you can leave the question on, it will help me pick up some words. Is it possible? You see, why are they utopian? I think they're utopian because I think we as human beings have succumbed to a whole lot of human failures. And Pranab, if you look back at 3, 4, 5,000 years, I also realize, and that is why you've asked me one interesting question as students. That is why I say my job is not to change the world. My job is to change myself. This is what Gandhi said, be the change you want to see, and so on and so on. So, I think fundamentally, maybe I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a social scientist, but when you read through 3,000-4,000 years of history, you see human behavior has not changed substantially. Greed, envy, jealousy, adultery has been talked about in the Bible. Adultery has been talked about before the Bible. Adultery is talked about today. Nothing has changed in 5,000 years. It's not that we have become worse than what we were. We are just where we were. But therefore, in today's world, because of the interaction, I feel we are fortunate to have been exposed a lot more. And therefore, my submission to you, Pranab, is very simple. I ask you, again, integrity, one of the best definitions I've seen of integrity is what do you do when no one else is watching? See, that defines you. You are not driven by rules. You are driven by yourself. So I find it very funny at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm standing at a red light. The bus behind me is honking. 3 cars are moving, but I still stand there because I am uncomfortable. So I think I would answer this to say, let's look at what can I do in my sphere of influence? What can I do in my thing? And let's make my world utopian rather than the planet Earth utopian.
I think every little helps. Every little thing adds up. If there are 7 billion people in this world and everybody looks at their own circle of influence and do little things, it's something they say, in an ad, I love this line called small milate jao, large banate jao. So I think everybody can keep on looking at certain things like that. There's one question, there is one which has come from Praveen. You can quickly answer. One question which I've also got, which is a little longer one.
I'll do that. Praveen, I think you should ask Professor Dwarika and people who are the experts in this, but I'm interestingly doing a seminar next week with HR managers all over, and the relationship between happiness and resignations, and what is the role of HR, global HR managers. I would like to believe there is a huge correlation. I would like to believe that you So, I do counseling in 30 and in 31 years of counseling. There's one fundamental philosophy we follow. And that philosophy is you cannot do good if you don't feel good. It's very simple.
Totally, totally.
So I
You
think that answer.
you need to be in a good space, happy space to be very productive. I
So,
totally
yeah,
agree on that. There is a positive correlation. Research can
absolutely.
prove it in a particular way, but we can look at our own life examples. The most productive you are in your own life are the times when you're actually mentally at peace, mentally
Yeah.
you're comfortable, mentally you're kind of happy. There's one question which I want to read up, which has come, and which is a very important question for youngsters. Many people are in bad place in their lives many times, but they desperately want to turn their life around. But many times their past holds them back because they would have not got good marks or something else would have happened and whatever. What can they do in that situation when the past keeps on dragging you back to the bad things? When you really want to turn it around, what would you do? What would you do?
Yeah, I wish there were a simple answer, fix it answer for this. But the only thing I can suggest is take stock of yourself and understand that the past happened for whatever reason. Can I change some of the parameters of the past? For example, see, I'm giving you a very simple managerial explanation. I always used to in as a marketing person also see what are the cause for my doing badly. Is it my competence? Is it my capability? Is it my skills? Is it my attitude? Identify what are the factors. Many times we are a square peg in a round hole. We are in the wrong place, and this is what happens to many of us. We are chasing the dreams of our parents. And today, for many of you youngsters, another word of caution is, I got this in my notes. You see, we want to do things which we are not capable of doing, which we are not temperamentally suited to doing. So, for example, I left corporate world at age 38. I was doing extremely well. I mean, IIT, IIM, you got all of that stuff. You think you're a cat's whiskers and everything. But when I left, I was sensible enough to realize I am not cut out to do certain things. And therefore, I never compared myself with people who had better bank balances, who had better things. So I would think that the past can be a millstone around you, but my suggestion would be take the past as a learning, take the past as saying, I don't want to make the same mistakes, and therefore take stock of yourself and assess your strengths, your capabilities, your desires, your interests, and be realistic to work within that. This is
Can
this
you read
is a,
the question, guys? You have to bring the question back because we yet to read up where Devamitra Mishra has. Yeah. How would one
Debamit.
channelize growth at present period while dealing with both positive and negative aspects of past and present? That's a good question.
Yeah. You see, again, I think what happens, Debamitra, is that are you just flowing along the? This is what I would go back to my analogy. Are you just flowing down a river, or are you consciously rowing down the river? Are you consciously navigating your port? Many of us come through school and college just flowing with the tide. We never really seriously think too much about what we want to do. And therefore, and this is okay up to college, but once you leave college, it becomes far more serious. It becomes far more serious because you have to choose career paths, you have to choose partners, you have to choose options in life, which have slightly longer term ramifications and implications. So my suggestion would be, that's why I said the GPS is keep calibrating yourself periodically. We would need to calibrate ourselves once in 20 years. You probably need to do it once in 3 to 5 years. Take
Yeah.
stock, take a day off, ask yourself, what am I looking for? What have I learned in the last 5 years? What have I learned in the last 7 years? Is this still important for me? Is it not important? Why is it ask yourself why. I think the question why is very. Why do I want to make more money? Why do I want this job? Why is it so important that I'm feeling angry that my classmate got this? A lot of our problems come from expectation and envy. A large amount of our challenges comes from expectation and envy. And envy, remember, is not about what Federer or Nadal does. It's about what my classmate does. I don't care whether Mukesh Ambani has 10 cars, but when my classmate buys that car, it kills me. I think these are the things we need to take stock of.
I
And,
think
and,
that
and your generation needs to think about it a little more than what we needed to do.
This is a good question by Rahil. What, in your sense, is the very first step of happiness, even when you are facing failure?
you, you know, okay, Rahil, again, I don't want to sound like a philosopher because I'm not. I'm a salesman. Okay, I am a hardcore salesman, nothing more than that. But happiness is in the mind, failure is an event. This is the way I would look at it. I may
That's a good.
fail in an activity, but happiness is what I decide to be. So a failure is a setback. There is no doubt about it. Let's not kid ourselves. So in counseling, we call this transient situational disorders. They are transient. It happens. I'll come out of it. Some people come out of it in one day. Some people come out of it in 1 week. That's personality. But a failure is about you had an expectation. So the next question you would ask yourself is, why would you consider a situation a failure?
Failure.
It's depends on the level of expectation you had. So there are multiple factors which come into that. But essentially, happiness. So this is why I want to just summarize what I said earlier. Happiness is about a state of mind. Pleasure is temporary. What I get when I get 99% is not happiness. It gives me pleasure. Happiness is here.
Right. So then
Okay.
this question comes from Devashi. Isn't dissatisfaction helpful to move ahead?
Yeah. Devashish, you have brought up a very interesting point. So there are two things. Let me answer that very quickly. You see, I am not saying you should not have aspirations. I am not saying you should not have a level of discontent. The question I'm saying is if it becomes counterproductive. Okay, so therefore I'll use some jargon of stress. See, there is something called eustress, and there's something. See, we all say stress, and when we talk of stress, we believe stress is a negative word. Stress is neutral. The word is eustress and distress. You need positive stress to make you achieve. But when that stress becomes counterproductive, then it becomes distress. The best example I can give for all of you as students and young people is, people talk about the nervous 90s in cricket. See, when a guy is hitting and he's flowing, he's got positive stress. But the minute he comes to 90s, the stress of a century, the stress of breaking a record becomes counterproductive. So I do not say you should not have ambition. I do not say you should not have dissatisfaction. In fact, you should not be satisfied with status quo. You must want change. You must want to do something different. But moderate that with reality. So, can I share one example of passion versus obsession, Professor, with your permission? It's quoted in my book, and it's a live example. So, I used to pride myself that I was passionate about badminton. I used to represent IIT. I played for a state, and I said there was never a day in my life I would miss my badminton with the rigor of IIT. And I was very proud of my passion for badminton. In my final year, I was called for the All India selections of the universities, All India universities badminton selections. And that year, the badminton all in universities was the national team for all practical purposes. That was the level of badminton in Europe. So I go for this camp in Gwalior. And here we are, youngsters, all 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. So we are sitting after practice, summer of Gwalior, it's boiling hot. And we are fooling around. Somebody's drinking, somebody's smoking, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that. And one fellow in this, at 8 o'clock, he would get up and go and into his room and sleep. All of us would be partying and doing all of it, and get up in the morning. And this person, in 1972, I'm telling you 40 years later, this person was Prakash Padukone, who ended up as the All England champion in 1980. And that is the day I was listening.
Your campmate, is it?
He was and I was listening to a talk by Geet Sethi, the world billiards champion. He talked about the difference between passion and obsession. Right. And I said that day, when 35 years later, when I was listening to Geet Sethi, I understood the difference between passion and obsession. Obsession is what they are. Obsession is what Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. They're not passionate about business. They're obsessed. But obsession, if it becomes negative, becomes counterproductive. So I use the word obsession in a positive way. So there must be a sense of dissatisfaction. There must be a sense of, no, I can do better than this. But set your goals, to something that doesn't make it counterproductive. Because then what happens? The previous question, I see it as failure.
Then another question has come from some of the youngsters who said, okay, in this tech age and a lot of technology, a lot of work pressure and others, how do we watch out not getting burnt out? Yeah, exactly. Pranav has just asked the question.
No,
I was
it's the same question. Now, I don't want to give the standard spiel, but this is the truth. You have to find a balance between various activities. You have to get a reality. See, why do you get a burnout? You get a burnout because you are setting an expectation level which may or may not be in line with what you want. The burnout does not happen to anybody. The burnout is happening to me because of me, not because of the boss. Please understand this. We blame the boss, we blame the college, we blame the prof, we blame everybody else. Nobody decides whether you're going to be happy or not except you. Now, you check out. That's why I keep saying the starting point for many of these is expectation and envy. Does expectation lead to envy or does envy lead to expectation? We can debate that.
Fair enough. I think, yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead.
think about this. Think about setting your expectation levels, and I think the most important thing for me in this context of the questions you've asked is my third eye. Ask yourself, have you given it your 100%? Have you done whatever job you decide, whether it's an assignment, whether it's a report, whether it's your exam, whether it's doing anything? I believe for me, making my bed in the morning is something I must make sure that the bed is made. I will not do something slipshod. And I think if you do that, you will go to sleep at peace saying, I gave it my 100%. And don't do anything that does not want you to give the 100%. That's the second thing. This is something you can keep for the next 50, 60 years of your life because you have 50, 60 years of your life left. It's very important.
Perfect. I think we'll take the one last question by PowerX, which says, how do you promote happiness in the workplace?
This is my topic with the HR managers next week. I'm going to, you've asked me this question because I have to answer this question with some Dada HR people. I think again, it's about, when I looked at this question, I would create an environment for people to involve themselves in the 5 I's. So if I am a director of an institute, if I am a boss, if I am an operating manager, what I would do is I would ask my colleagues, my employees, my team members to make sure that they have the balance of the 5 I's in their lives. And I would do whatever I can to help them get involved, interact with people, clarify their value systems, and so on and so forth. I think that is what I would do to promote happiness.
Perfect. With that, we'll come to the close of the session. We'll request Pranav Prasanna, our first year BBA student from RV University, to propose a vote of thanks from everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I would like to extend a vote of thanks to Ramesh Venkateshwaran, sir. It was a very insightful and engaging talk. And the topics that you brought out about ethics and morals and how life is a trail and not actually just a single road, it reminded me a lot of Ikigai. So this could be the 21st century Ikigai, the Japanese book. So I would also like to thank KLF director Rashmi Ranjan sir and Sitanshu Manotra sir for promoting authors and artists alike on such a huge platform, because most of like in our technological age, people are not concentrating that much on artists, and giving a platform to them has been a really good push. uh, i would also I would also like to thank Mrs. Shrushti from HarperCollins for helping in publishing of such novels and books, and extending the reach of the author. And last but not the least, I would like to thank our Professor Dwarika sir, as for us students in this stage of life, such knowledge is actually required, and this kind of things are not taught in classes, and they cannot be taught. It has to be learned through books and resources. And last but not the least, I would like to thank the VC and the board of RVU for giving us an opportunity to attend such a seminar. As later in life we would never get time to apply these, this is the time where our brain's volatile, so we'd be able to absorb all these lessons very deeply. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to thank Ashutosh, who you missed out in thanking, who's been the person who's brought RVU Kalinga and Mr. Ramesh Venkateshwaran together.
Thank you.
And we would like to extend a warm welcome to Mr. Venkat to our university and your daughter's alma mater. Whenever time permits and whenever in the better times, when Bangalore would be better there in the pandemic situation, hopefully by next month, we would love to invite you for a physical talk with our faculty as well as with our students, and we'll have a much longer discussion over chai and other things as a typical university environment would like to foster. So thank you everyone, and it was a pleasure. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay masked, and don't catch Omicron. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Anytime you call me, I'll be there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.